The DJI Mini 2 drone is an amazing little piece of technology, and there are lots of obvious reasons to love it. However, I had a comment from one of my viewers the other day that really struck a chord with me and reminded me that there are other reasons to love this drone, but most people don't talk about them. But today we will, so don't go away. Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. I'll cut straight to the chase. The other day I published a video about the features of the Mini 2 compared to the Mini SE. One of my viewers, a channel called TJ Rides, posted a comment about how he used to have the Mavic Pro and he's essentially replaced that with the Mini SE and is very happy with his decision. In his comment, he made some very valid points, some of which we never actually talk about, but actually make a big difference in whether or not we enjoy the products we end up buying, and in some cases, whether we end up buying them or not in the first place. His comments struck a real chord with me because I felt exactly the same way. And yet, in all of the reviews and videos I've made about drones like the Mini 2, I've never talked about them. So in this video, we'll rattle through the points that TJ Rides made, and I'd love to hear from you in the comments below if you agree with them or not. And by the way, I'll put a link to the TJ Rides channel, so why don't you hop across later and show him some love. Cheers guys. Now as I said, TJ Rides has replaced his, I'm assuming it's a him, it could be a her, sorry TJ if I get it wrong one way or the other. Anyway, they replaced their Mavic Pro with the Mini SE. Before we get into why it was preferred over the Mavic Pro, I'll touch on a couple of things that drew them to the Mini SE. And make sure you stick around because I'll then talk about those reasons that we don't normally talk about. So hear me out. First of all, it's easy to use. So easy in fact that they're going to let their 9-year-old loose with it, and to be honest, that's great. What a cool introduction to what could be a lifelong hobby. And it's with a really high quality product that is easy to fly. I remember the days of buying remote control helicopters and even remote control cars, and they often ended up being too hard to control. Now I'm not saying you shouldn't be careful and that you should just let them go with it with no supervision, but the point is they are easy to use. The Mini SE does offer more than decent quality photos and video capability. In most cases for casual users or even those wanting to try their hand at drone photography or videography, the Mini SE is capable of producing some great images either for quick posting to social media or for editing in applications like Adobe Lightroom or Photoshop. It's capable of a really good flight time. The batteries are rated at 30 minutes in ideal conditions, and while you're probably not going to hit that full amount of time, you're going to get at least 20 to 25 minutes out of it, which for devices like these is absolutely incredible. If you invest in a couple more batteries, either through getting the Fly More combo or just buying the batteries outright, you're going to get heaps of flying time, no problems at all. TJ Rides also mentioned that the SE is so cheap it's ridiculous. They picked one up for 485 New Zealand dollars, and I have to agree. For the price, the technology you get for that is nothing short of incredible. And the fact that you can get something like this for so cheap actually links into one of the things we don't talk about, which I'll cover soon. In terms of range, even though the Mini SE uses enhanced Wi-Fi versus the OcuSync 2.0 of the Mini 2, meaning the range maxes out at about 4 kilometers versus the 10 kilometers of the Mini 2, TJ Rides makes a good point. Who really needs to fly further than 4K anyway? You legally should be keeping your drone in line of sight at all times, and with drones as small as the Mini SE and Mini 2, you need amazing vision to be able to see them even if they are only a few hundred meters away from you. And given that it's available at such an amazing price, even if the worst should happen and you crash, damage or even lose the drone, it's not going to break the bank. Now that doesn't mean at all that you should be reckless or casual with the drone, and they're not suggesting that at all, but it does take some of the pressure off when you're flying, and that brings us nicely to one of the things we don't normally talk about. Like it or not, when you own or are flying a drone like the Mavic 2, you do feel the pressure, and in a number of different ways. The first and most obvious one is that the thing costs a lot of money, and if you crash it or lose it, it's going to cost you a hell of a lot to fix it or replace it. As an aside to that, I would recommend investing in the DJI Care plan, which definitely minimises the amount of pain your wallet will feel if you do find yourself in that horrible situation. But anyway, back to my point. The other pressure is that in a lot of ways a drone as capable as the Mavic Pro is too complex for many people for what TJ Rides calls pleasurable quick use. There's so many bells and whistles, extra functions and settings you can use that it can sometimes be a bit overwhelming versus the Mini SE or Mini 2 where it's a lot more simplified. And then there's the pressure you feel if you have all of these bells and whistles at your disposal and you're not using them. You feel that you're not making the most of the extra money you've spent on getting the Rolls Royce. Sometimes choice is a good thing, but other times having a lack of choice is kind of liberating. Now, most of us are hard pressed for time and don't always fly our drones as much as we'd like. Not too much of a problem with the Mini SE, but if you've invested a few $1,000s in your top-of-the-range Mavic Pro and it's just sitting in a dark cupboard for a great deal of the time, well, that builds pressure and guilt on you as well, right? It may sound silly, but it's true. I'm sure all of us at some stage have bought something expensive thinking it'd be great and we really needed it, but feel guilty because we don't use it. Sometimes all we want is to get it up for a quick flight, take a few basic pictures or video and put it away again. When you've got something like the Mini SE, in a sense, you're free from all of those pressures that I mentioned before. We're all programmed to want the next gadget, the latest and greatest version, the version with all the bells and whistles, but in their comment, I thought TJ Rides summed up perfectly why you don't have to. That you can be more happy and in a lot of ways even happier without it. Now, I'm not saying for a second that if you want a Mavic Pro or the Air 2S or the like, and you can justify the cost and have a real use for the technology with all the features and capability that it can bring, that you shouldn't get one. No, not at all. If that's the case, then go ahead, fill your boots and enjoy yourself. I just thought they raised some very valid points and ones that many of us feel but never talk about. I'd love to hear what you think in the comments section below. I've also made more than a few videos on how to get the best out of your Mini 2 drone. So check out the playlist on the screen now and I'll see you over there. Cheers guys.